Hi, this is Sandra with SpondyStrong, and I'm here to show you a gentle bedtime yoga sequence today. This class is especially designed for people who have spondyloarthritis or AS like me, and it's appropriate for anyone who can sit down on the floor as well as get on your hands and knees for a couple poses, and we'll also be lying down on our backs a little bit. I will offer a few modifications using a chair, and I'll also show you some ways to use props to make it a little more comfortable to get down on the floor. And just a note before we get started, as you follow along, if at any point you feel any pain or if a pose just doesn't feel right for your body, we would encourage you to skip that one. I think that yoga is really about finding what feels best in your body and not trying to reach any particular perfect type of pose, but just focusing on your own experience. And also, before starting a new exercise program, just make sure to check with your doctor to make sure that it's appropriate for you. All right, so before we get started, just a note about what to have available. I have 2 yoga mats stacked on top of each other because I'm on a hard floor. If you're on a carpet, you probably only need one. Or if you don't have a yoga mat, you could use a blanket or towel on the floor. And then if you have 1 or 2 blankets, I'm sitting on top of 2 folded blankets in order to get a little bit more length in my spine. If you happen to have a meditation cushion like this or some kind of firm pillow, that could work as well. And then if you have either yoga blocks or anything about this size and shape, will be nice to have. I also brought a couple of bed pillows, which I will show you how to use a little bit later. And if you have either a yoga strap or some kind of non-stretchy strap, I'll show you how to use that for happy baby pose. So once you have everything ready, then you can either sit down on the floor, or if that's not going to work for you, you can sit in your chair. If you are sitting on the floor, see if you can sit right at the edge of your folded blankets or towels, and this allows your pelvis to tilt a little bit so you can sit up a little bit taller. And then if you want to place something under your knees for a little bit more support, you could put your blocks or block substitutes under your knees like this. Or if it's not comfortable for you to sit cross-legged, if there's any other comfortable seat that works for you, then you can go ahead and come into that comfortable seat. And then if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, go ahead and close your eyes. Start to slow down and deepen your breathing. Taking long, slow inhales in through your nose and long, slow exhales out through your nose. Notice the feeling of your sitting bones grounded on the floor, and then imagine your spine being as long as it can be. The crown of your head is reaching up toward the ceiling, but your shoulders are floating away from your ears. Your hands can rest gently in your lap. And we're taking a few moments just to arrive at class, trying to let go of any thoughts or worries about what was going on earlier or what's going to happen afterwards. Just focusing on the present moment. Take a few more deep breaths in and out through your nose. And then on your next inhale, imagine your lungs expanding in all directions, side to side, up and down. And then exhale all the air out. And then whenever you're ready, you can allow your eyes to gently float open. All right, welcome everyone. We'll start with some gentle neck movements with a few different options. You can either turn your head to look over each shoulder just as much as feels safe for your neck today. Going back and forth a few times, just gently looking over each shoulder. Or maybe you might tilt your head from side to side, bringing each ear towards each shoulder for a couple breaths, seeing how that feels. Or if that's feeling okay, you might also start to circle your chin down towards your chest, eventually bringing your other ear to your other shoulder. Or maybe you try a combination of these movements, just finding whatever feels comfortable and safe for your neck today. Starting to stretch out all our neck muscles. then whenever you feel even on both sides, then you can come back to center. And then bring your hands onto your lap, circling your shoulders a few times, going backwards in space. You might press your hands into your thighs in order to send your shoulders up as high as they go towards your ears. Continuing to breathe deeply through your nose. And then you can flip your palms over and circle your shoulders a few times, going forwards. Maybe noticing how this direction feels different. And then you can go ahead and let that go. And for this next part, I like to move my blocks out of the way and also sit a little bit closer to the ground. So I'm getting rid of one blanket, but you can keep yours if you'd like. I'm also going to move a little bit away from the wall. And then I'm keeping my pelvis grounded and starting to circle my torso a few times, going in one direction, starting to stretch out my lower back and the sides of my body. If you'd like, when you come forward, you might bring your shoulders into the stretch a little bit. And there's no real wrong or right way to do this one. We're just trying to find some nice feeling movements in the low back and the sides of the body. Some gentle hip movements as well. And then after a few rounds in one direction, you can reverse your circle, going the other direction. When you come backwards, you might tip behind your sitting bones a little bit. Taking a few more rounds like this, continuing to breathe deeply. And then once you feel even on both sides, then you can come back to neutral. And now we'll bring our feet straight out in front of us. And if this feels really difficult to sit up tall like this, you could come up against a wall in order to use that wall as a little bit of support. And then bring your hands out in front as well, and we'll circle our wrists and ankles a few times, going outwards. Just bringing some gentle movements to all of our joints. And then you can reverse your circle, going inwards. If you're doing this at the end of the day, maybe this feels nice on your wrists if you've been at a computer a lot. And then you can let that go. We're going to come onto our hands and knees. And if you need some extra cushioning under your knees, you could put your blanket or towel under your knees. I usually unfold it one fold from how it was when I was sitting on it. And then set yourself up in a tabletop position with your wrists right underneath your shoulders and your knees under your hips. We'll be doing some cat-cow, and if this doesn't feel accessible to you, I'll show you the chair version in a moment. And then on your inhale, start to arch your spine any amount, sending your tailbone and forehead toward the ceiling. And then as you exhale, round your spine any amount, looking towards your belly button, going just as far as feels comfortable for you. You can continue a few rounds like that, moving on your own breath. Exhaling to round your spine, thinking about puffing your back up toward the ceiling. And inhaling as you arch your spine, thinking about broadening your collarbones. And you can continue like that at your own pace. If you'd like to try this one in a chair, I'm going to sit at the edge of my chair facing sideways so you can see this one. On your inhale, you'll arch your spine any amount, maybe looking upwards a little bit, but not letting your head drop backwards. And then as you exhale, round your spine, maybe tipping a little bit behind your sitting bones. And then continuing a few rounds like that at your own pace. Cat-cow is a great stretch for bringing some movement into the spine, stretching the muscles along the spine. And then wherever you are the next time that you finish rounding your spine, then we'll meet back in neutral. And then if you are down on your mat, in your hands and knees pose, then you can walk each of your hands forward, one handprint, tuck your toes under, and then lift your hips up for downward facing dog. And in downward dog, our goal is to send our sitting bones up toward the ceiling. It's okay if your knees are really bent here. The goal is to try to make as long a line as possible from your tailbone to the crown of your head. Maybe you want to straighten each leg at a time, stretching out your calves. Make sure that you're pressing into all 10 fingers, especially the pointer finger and thumb side of your hand. Maybe you find some stillness in your downward dog. And if at any point this feels like too much, you can gently bring your knees down, coming down to rest. And if you would like to try the chair version of downward dog, you can bring your hands either onto the lower part of your chair or the higher part of your chair, and then start to walk your feet backwards until your arms are fairly straight. Thinking about sending your sitting bones back behind you. Maybe you bend and straighten your knees a little bit. And again, the goal is to get that long line from your tailbone to the crown of your head. And you can stay here for a few deep breaths. And whenever you're ready, you can walk your feet back towards your hands. And then if you are down on your mat, you can bring your knees as wide as your mat, bringing your toes together, and we'll sit back for child's pose. If you did use a blanket, you might want to move it out of the way. And then I'll show you a few different options for child's pose. If it's available to you, you might do this without any props. Your forehead can come down to the mat. You can either keep your arms stretched out long or relax your forearms down on the floor. Or if the floor feels too far away and that's not comfortable, then you could try getting a couple of pillows. Just any pillows from your bed will be fine. And then placing them underneath your torso. And then maybe, depending on how long your pillows are or how tall you are, you might rest your face on your pillows. If you can't breathe, you can bring your face to the side. And then maybe turn your head to the other side after a while. Or if your pillows are a little bit shorter or you're a little bit taller, you might have a block or something under your forehead. I need 2 blocks here to make that comfortable. There we go. And then you can just rest your head on your blocks. Your arms can rest down on the floor. If this feels like too much flexion in your knees, another option is to get a rolled blanket. So rolling it lengthwise, so you have sort of a long roll, and then placing that behind your knees. That's going to reduce how much your knees are bending. And then you sort of sit back on your blanket, reaching your arms forward, and you could still use either of those other props, your blocks or your pillows. If you are on a harder floor, you could also keep a blanket underneath your knees. So a lot of different options here. So I'll give you another few moments in whatever version of child's pose you're in. If none of those options felt good for you, there's also a way to try this with a chair. You can turn your chair so that the seat is facing you, and then you'll have to find what kind of a seat feels most comfortable to you. Maybe you do want that rolled blanket underneath your knees. Takes a little bit of finagling to get it in the right spot. And then you can relax your forearms down onto your chair. Maybe your forehead comes down. Maybe if that's too hard, you need some cushioning, you can bring another blanket onto your chair. You might have to sort of play with how far away you want your chair to be from you. The goal is to find a restful pose here where you can just let everything sort of hang down a little bit. And wherever you are, you can close your eyes here. Taking a few deep breaths in child's pose. And then whenever you're ready, if you're down on the floor, you can walk your hands back towards your body and then remove any props that you used. You can place them out of the way for now. We'll come back to our hands and knees. And then go ahead and walk each of your hands forward, one handprint, one more time. We're coming back into a downward dog, so feel free to use your chair if you need to. Tuck your toes, lifting your hips up toward the ceiling, and take a few breaths in downward dog here. Thinking of lifting your sitting bones up as high as they go toward the ceiling. And then bend your knees and start to walk your feet forward to meet your hands, or however you want to get there. We're going to end up in a forward fold. And we'll have a few different options for our forward fold. You can use your blocks here at any height in order to bring the floor a little bit closer to you. Or maybe you bend your knees a lot, letting your torso rest on your thighs. You could also use your chair for forward fold. The goal is to get a hamstring stretch, but you'll also notice that if you bend your knees, you get more of a back release. So just finding whatever version feels good to you. You could walk closer towards your chair, putting a little more weight into your forearms. Taking a few deep breaths in whatever version of forward fold is feeling good to you today. Maybe you play with bending and straightening your knees a little bit. And then whenever you're ready, you can move your props out of the way if you use them. And we'll make our way down onto the floor, bending your knees as much as you need to plant your hands down and bringing your knees down to the mat or however you want to get here. And then we'll be coming down onto our backs. If you do happen to have a strap or some kind of non-stretchy strap-like thing, like a bathrobe belt, you can have that handy for a happy baby. And then we'll come down onto our backs, however you want to get there. Maybe you bring your forearms down, or maybe you come down onto one side. And then once you get here, go ahead and hug your knees in towards your chest. Maybe you hold onto your shins, or maybe you hold behind your thighs. Gently pulling your knees in towards your body. Maybe you feel a release in your hips. And if it feels good here, you might want to rock from side to side. I find that if I am on a hard floor with just one yoga mat, that can feel like too much on my low back, but 2 yoga mats is a good amount. If you are on a thick carpet, this might not feel like much of a low back massage. You can also make circles with your knees. This is one of my favorites, but it depends on your amount of cushioning underneath you. If it's not feeling possible for you today to get down on your back like this, or it's not feeling good, you could also do these next couple of poses sitting in your chair. And if you wanted to do knees to chest in your chair, as you sit in a chair, ideally with something under your feet, if your feet don't touch the floor, then you could hold onto the front of one shin or behind your thigh, just gently bringing your knee towards your chest any amount, holding that side for a couple breaths, and then letting go and bringing the other knee towards your chest, aiming for a little bit of a hip release. And then you can let that go. I'll show happy baby on the floor and then with a chair option. So if you're already on your back with your knees in towards your chest, then you'll bring the soles of your feet towards the ceiling. Your knees are wider than hip distance and your knees are coming towards the floor on either side of you. It's okay if they don't get very close, but that's the direction they're heading. And then bring your forearms on the inside of your lower legs. Your hands can either hold onto the outer edges of your lower legs or the outer edges of your feet. Or if that is not accessible, you can use your strap around your feet. So it's sort of on the arches of your feet. Your feet are still out pretty wide. You're holding one side of the strap in each hand. And then wherever you are, whether you're using your strap or not, think about pressing your feet up into your strap or hands, and then pulling down with your hands. So you're getting a little bit of hip traction here. And try to keep your tailbone coming down towards the floor as much as you can instead of letting your whole butt lift up. If it feels good, you might gently rock from side to side here. I don't have quite enough room because of my wall. Or maybe you find some stillness. So if that's feeling good, you can stay in happy baby for a couple of breaths. If you want to do this one in your chair, again, sitting in your chair with something under your feet, and then hold in front of one of your knees, gently bringing your knee in similar to before, but trying to bring it a little bit more outward. And you might want to be against the back of your chair a little bit for some support here. Maybe you're holding onto your chair with your opposite hand. Taking a few deep breaths here. And then you can switch to the other side. This one is actually a little bit more effortful than when you're down on your back because you're relying on gravity more there. This one you're actually having to use some arm strength to sort of pull your leg upwards. And then wherever you are, you can let that go. And we'll be setting up for our final relaxation in a moment, but if there's any other poses or movements that you feel like your body needs first, if you want to hug your knees in towards your chest again, or any other last small movements that you need. And then when you're ready, you can either stay seated in your chair with your feet on top of something. You can sit against the back of your chair so that you can feel nice and supported here. You can also lie down flat on your back on the floor, or you might want to place something underneath your knees. You could put a rolled blanket under your knees, or if you do have some nice big pillows, these can be nice to have underneath your knees. So take your time to really set yourself up in a way that will feel really comfortable and supportive for you. So maybe you're lying down on your back, or if there isn't a comfortable way for you to lie down on your back, you could also come up to a piece of furniture. I'm gonna just turn my chair here. So maybe you have a chair or a table or a low couch. You can come up next to your furniture, coming down onto your forearms, and then placing your calves up on top. You might need to scoot yourself a little bit closer. And then you can lie down on your back. So really find whatever final rest position feels most comfortable to you, whether that's flat on your back, using a chair like this, or maybe seated in your chair. And then make any last adjustments that you need in order to find some stillness. If you'd like, you could bring one hand onto your belly and one hand onto your chest. And then if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, if they're not already, you can close your eyes. Starting to slow down and deepen your breathing, allowing everything to just sink down into the floor. We'll be here for a few moments, and if you notice your thoughts starting to wander, that's totally normal. Just notice when that happens, and then bring your attention back to your breath. Maybe focusing on the feeling of your hands rising and falling with each breath. Allowing yourself to be totally supported by the floor, not having to do any work to hold yourself up. Like you could switch which hand is on your belly and which one is on your chest. Taking a few more deep breaths. Again, noticing if your thoughts are wandering. Just noticing and bringing your attention back to the rise and fall of your hands. And now begin to allow your breath to deepen. Bringing your focus back to the present moment. And then as you're ready, you can stretch your arms up overhead any amount. And then if you're on your back, you can bend your knees, either bringing your feet onto the floor or your knees into your chest. And then eventually coming down onto one side, maybe taking a moment in the fetal position. If you're in your chair, you can find a couple more moments of stillness. And then as you're ready, you can press into one hand in order to come back up to a seated position. Maybe your eyes are still closed, or maybe you find a soft gaze down at the floor, setting yourself up in a comfortable seat. And then feel your sitting bones grounded on the floor. Imagine the crown of your head reaching up toward the ceiling as tall as it can, but your shoulders melt down away from your ears. Take a moment just to notice how you're feeling physically and mentally. And then if you'd like, you can join me in bringing your hands together at the center of your chest, taking a deep inhale as you lift your chest up into your hands. And as you exhale, allow your head to bow down any amount, feeling gratitude for taking this time for yourself today. And as we like to say in yoga, Namaste, which means the light in me bows to the light in you. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you to the Spondylitis Association of America for this collaboration. I hope that you sleep well. Bye. Thank you.